Welcome into Pritches Get Stitches. This is part 2 of this week's episode. You've got a friend in me. Listen in as Scott and I discuss not only the intricacies of making friends as we get older, but the research behind why adults often struggle to make and foster deep friendships. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and you can find us on the socials at Pritch and Moan. Thanks for being here and enjoy.
You know?
Right. And I think the thing with, the difference between, again, kids and adults is the definition of friendship itself. For kids, this kid likes peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. He's now my friend, right?
Right.
Very easy, very simple concept where we would say like, oh, I know this person through so-and-so. They're just an acquaintance.
Right.
Well, the problem is when, as adults, we label somebody as an acquaintance. So kids don't have that definition. They don't have that definition of acquaintance for the most part. That's something that they learn down the road, right?
Yep.
So
I've never had my kids come home and say, "Hey, I've got 7 acquaintances at school, right, and I've got 3 friends." It's like I've got 10 friends.
Right. So at some point, it shifts into adulthood. I don't know at what age. Maybe that's a little thing I can look up. But at some point, it switches from everybody's my friend to we categorize. Like, this is a friend, this is acquaintance. Well, the problem when you categorize friends into these different levels is that people who you consider an acquaintance, you devalue that relationship in your mind. So in your mind, it's because they're an acquaintance. They're just not that important. So you don't consider that maybe you should take the time to foster this relationship and that they could ever be anything more because they're just an acquaintance. They're just that.
Yeah. So, I mean, definitely we can learn, from my daughter, Lexi, when she was little, 2-3 years old, we'd go to the park. We were at the time living in Killeen, and we'd show up to the park and we'd pull up and there would be all these kids on the park, and she'd look up and she'd say, "Mom, look at all my friends. Look at all those friends." And she's like, "What? Who's here? Who do you see?" And she's like, "Just look at them. Look at all my friends." And she'd get out of the car and she'd run to the park. "Hey, friends. Hi, friends." She's running to the park because they were all her friends. Like, she didn't even know them. And to this day, Lexi is very, very friendly with everybody. She loves people. She loves to make friends, and they may not be all best friends, but I don't know that Lexi has really any acquaintances. It's either they're my friend or they're not. And she's 14. And so hopefully she keeps that kind of going in her life.
She knows no stranger. Everybody to her is a potential friend.
Right. So real quick, Holly, I want to transition to something real fast.
Okay.
And we'll get back to, and we have a lot of research and there's a lot of stuff here. And I know that you want to put some of those notes into our, the description of the show and everything. Right. But before we get into some of those, I didn't want to miss out on this opportunity to talk about, we talked about apps last week for dating, right? And one of those apps you talked about was Bumble.
Correct.
And then there's another aspect to that app, right?
Right. I knew that you were going to make me talk about this. I knew that's what you were trying to get me to do earlier, so I purposely avoided it, but I will put myself
You kept giving me more research, and I'm like, I need to bring this in.
True statement. So I moved here, got my own place in January. My nephew, one of my nephews who I'm close with, we lived in Utah. He's texting me and he's like, "How's it going?" And I'm like, "Man, I'm just really struggling. I thought it would be easier to make friends here." He's like, "Well, what are you doing to make friends?" And I'm like, I just thought it would be easier.
I'm researching how to make friends.
Right. So he's like, "Well, why don't you try the Bumble BFF app?" And I'm like, absolutely not. Like, I refuse. Because in my mind at this point, even though I'd done research and knew.
So it's like a dating app, but for finding friends.
Right. So I knew friendships don't happen organically or whatever as adults. It still was it was just too far for me to do. I just couldn't imagine that I would get onto an app.
So you get on, you make a profile.
So after I'm like, all right, well, obviously going out and trying to meet people this way is not working out. So I'm going to go on this app and I'm going to try it out. So there's actually 3 different aspects that you can use on the Bumble app. One is the dating. One is called BFF, to meet friends. And then one is called, I think it's called Biz or Buzz. It's to network for business. I've never used that one, but I decided okay, I'm going to give the Bumble BFF a try. So I go on, it's like the same app, different platforms. So when you get into there, it you set up a whole new profile. Like, and it's different questions than what they're asking on the dating app, but it's still kind of the same concept. So you're still putting on there like things you like to do. You still post pictures. You have a bio about yourself. But I set it up, and at first I was like, this is so weird, because it's like, it's almost like the concept of dating, but not dating. So it's not
different pictures too.
So you can do different pictures. So, you know,
you're not gonna have the BFF app with the same pictures you put on the dating app of like.
Correct. Like, you don't want like your sultry pictures, you know, over on the BFF app. So I talked to a lot of people. And one thing I found, first of all, Bumble BFF specifically, it's the only one I used or tried. And I take that back. I did try like the Meetup app and a couple things, but then it was like, oh, I wanted to go, maybe I'll try this group on the Meetup, but to get the information about it, I had to pay for the app. So I was like, well, I don't want to pay for it because I don't even know like how it's going to work out. So that's why. Like,
you're already at a low, like, I'm not trying. Okay. So you're already like, I'm having to use an app to find friends. And now you want me to pay?
You have to, right. And so you
pay for friends? What?
Right. And you can't pay for the Bumble app. I never did. And the only difference is like, you can see who liked you or matched with you if you pay. But I'm like, no, thanks. I'll just take my chances. So I get on the BFF app. And the thing that I found, first of all, is like 95% of the people on the app are introverts.
Well, how many are dudes?
Well, first of all,
on the BFF side.
So you can choose to like match with men only, women only, men and women.
I just can't think that there's a lot of dudes on this thing.
Well, I'm sure there's dudes. So here's my theory on if for the guys who are like, I'm just on here to meet, you know, girlfriends. I think they're trying to play the long game. It's like they're going to get in like as the friend, hoping that somebody they meet one day will transition into something more. I don't know. To me, it was kind of like.
So dudes trying to meet ladies women as a friend, not necessarily.
Right. Or maybe their profile is set to meet everybody. I don't know. But when I had it set to everybody, I could see men and women. And there were men on the BFF app. Now,
I just don't see dudes. Like, it's hard. Like, I don't even want to talk to guys at the gym. You know, I mean, like built in, like my wife goes to the gym. We go to the gym together. My wife takes these workout classes. Instantly, she's got 15 friends because she's, you know, goes to this workout class. And some of their husbands work out at the same time I do. And I'm just on the floor. She's in the class. And these girls' husbands are on the floor too. And we just know we're each other's, you know, our wives are friends, but we just like, hey, what's up? And don't even say hi. Like, I haven't even ever introduced myself to these guys. I don't even know their names. And here they are right in front of my face. So I can't even imagine being like, hey, let me make a profile and put myself onto Bumble BFF.
You know, I will say as a pretty extroverted person, it was very different for me. But so, like I said, it's like 95% are introverts, and their profiles will say things like, you know, what's your ideal first BFF? They call it a BFF date. Like, what's your BFF date? And then the answers are things like one in which you'll cancel so I don't have to. Like it's like, I don't know if
like,
you really want to meet people. Right. I'm not sure if it's like, hey, their friends and family are like, you need to go meet people. And they're like, hey, I signed up for this app. And
their therapist is like, hey, by the way, you want to meet friends, you need to, you know, get on this app. And it's like unemployment. You have to go to so many job applications. There's so job interviews, and they're like, same thing. Like, hey, what's your report? How many BFF dates did you attempt?
Right. How many people did you talk to? So, you know, I friended a bunch of people who I was like, okay, she's cool. And I wanted to get people who were kind of close by to where I was as well, because I already have friends that live here that are 45 minutes to an hour away, and it's hard to meet up that far. So I end up, you know, friending all sorts of people. They match. And then as soon as they would match, I would make the effort to say hi first, because you only have 24 hours to say hi before the match expires, and you can't match with them again unless you pay for the app. So as soon as it would say like, you know, hey, you matched, I would go in, and I would only check it like once in the morning and once at night. I don't have like notifications coming to my phone. And so at night I would check if I'd matched with anybody, or, you know, in the morning, then I would just say like, hi, nice to connect with you. And then I would ask them a question related to their profile, because I actually like read the profiles to make sure, hey, we're going to have things in common. So I ended up talking to some introverts who I think, again, checking the box, they never really made that transition. Right. I would say like, well, here's my number. Why don't you give me a text and shoot a text, and like we can meet up or whatever. Right. So one of the girls on there was like, yeah, I'll text you soon. Well, then I didn't hear from her, but she was one who was like pretty engaged on the app. Well, then it's like 4 days later, she starts messaging me on the app again.
Like, hey, I just saw your profile.
Yeah, and I'm like, hey, like I gave you my number. Why didn't you just text my number? But instead she wants to keep it on the app, because I don't think she was actually really interested in that.
Right.
Ship. Gotcha. It was just, what I found was the 95 were introvert. The other 5% were just like me, like new to the area or working from home or new to the area and working from home, trying to find, or maybe like getting out of a relationship, whatever the situation. So I ended up meeting 4 girls that way.
All right, 4.
And one of them, we didn't stay in contact. She was a little bit younger than I was. And it just kind of,
that's kind of your scene though, like just find the younger crowd because you want to try to stay young, like we talked about. Right. And she's like, yeah, this Bumble BFF date was this old lady, like trying to keep her youth.
She was mid-30s, but it just seemed like, I don't know, she just didn't have a lot of life experience maybe. So she seemed a lot, not in a bad way. We were in different parts, Gotcha. So the other 3 girls, one of them is pretty introverted. So we don't get together as often, but we do try to plan things, and we text and we, text her at the day. We do meet up. One of the girls lives maybe 10 minutes from me. We get together pretty often. And then the other one, she's about 45 minutes away. She was one of those who snuck in the 45-minute one, but we do try to meet up and we usually will meet halfway and grab dinner, drinks or whatever. But I text all of them pretty normally. And it's nice to have, people who are local because yes, I do have my group of friends who I text. All my friends who I've known forever and ever and ever, we text throughout the day, but they're not here. And it would, and it's like, sometimes I just want to go out for a drink or dinner and I don't want to go sit by myself. And I would rather have somebody who I know to a certain extent go versus me sitting at a bar and talking to the random person next to me.
Right.
But, the thing I have to say is it was really weird for me, especially like the first date. It was like, this is so weird. And I just felt awkward. And you almost feel, I almost felt a little bit like ashamed. Like, why aren't my friendships happening organically? Why am I having to do this? Even though, again, I knew like friendships.
You knew all the research. You knew everything. You've done it.
It still felt a little awkward. But I realized pretty quickly with all 4 girls was that just as awkward about it as I did. So once we could acknowledge that, like, and I did on one of them, I was like, on the very first one I went on, I was like, this is kind of weird. And she acknowledged it was weird. Then it was like, okay, we got this out of the way. And then we could talk. And, it was kind of funny though, because it is, as much as it's not a date, like romantic, it is a date. And so it's like the same awkwardness that you might feel on a regular date. So have you and Val ever played like the game, like married couple or first date?
Never played that. And just so I haven't been on a first date for a really long time.
Okay. So like, usually it'll be like, we'll go, like, I'll play it with my friends, whoever I'm at with, like, you see a couple sitting at a table or at the bar and maybe they're not talking or they're on their phones or whatever the situation is. And you're like married couple or first date. Cause like, is this weird because they don't know what to say to each other because they've never met? Or is this just routine and because they've said everything there is to say, they're just going to sit here, So I'm sure that's what a lot of people played when they saw me sitting there because here I am with these people I don't know. It's very awkward. And you're kind of trying to feel out like, is this compatible? Do I want to see them again?
That would be kind of that would be an awkward situation. Obviously, usually you go out with somebody like when I go with my guy friends, I know them already. And it's never like, hey, let's just meet up for lunch. Usually that's like I already know them. Right. And usually that's a business deal. Like if I'm doing something for business, hey, let's go out for lunch. But we have something to talk about. It's not a friendship thing. It's a business thing. And that's the only time I ever go with people I don't know or maybe show up and somebody's there that I don't know. But usually, I never had experience anything like that. That's crazy. Yeah.
And it was a little weird. Like 3 of them, I want to say.
Is it kind of like a blind date? So to speak?
Because you really don't know anything other than what they really put on their profile. Like I did text with them a little bit before just to make sure, do we have stuff in common? But you really don't know until they show up. And so one of them, she actually was like, like, what do you like to do? We talked about art and things. And then she was like, hey, there's this place and you can go paint, 3 pieces. And so I was like, well, that'll be good because then we're going to be busy as we're talking. So it's not going to be so like, hey, we're just sitting here with a drink, So that was actually the first one I went on. And at first it was kind of weird, but we happened to go on the day we went, there was like a kid's birthday party there. So that kind of helped break the ice where we're like, well, it's kind of loud, but then we just sat there for 2 hours and painted our pottery and chatted. And it felt very normal once I could get over that. I was always judging myself. Like I felt like I just judged myself for it. Like what a loser. Like you're having to meet people this way. And once I could get over that, like, hey, you know what? This is how sometimes you have
meet.
to do this. Yeah.
I mean, that's how you meet to date. I mean, you have some crazy first date stories that you've shared with
so
me.
So many of those. Luckily, I haven't had any crazy like friendship dates, but I'm also no longer on the app. I figured 3 to 4 friends. Yeah, that was plenty. So,
well, and the thing is, like, now that you have these friends, kind of transitioning, kind of back to some of the science here, but now that you have these friends, you have 3 of them, like, what are some things that you can do to continue to foster those friendships? One of the things that you talked about, or that I see here that I read through, was something that maybe I don't do as often, and you called it the 3-6 rule. What's going on there? Like, what's that?
So the 3-6 rule, and again,
I just think, just real quick, I just think 3-6 Mafia when I saw that.
But just for the readers, anything, or listeners, I'm sorry, anything that I reference today, I will put in the description. I'll put a link to anything I referenced today. So one of the things, research stories, and it's only been one story that I found, and it's not really research so much as it is like personal experience, I guess. And the 3-6 rule is the idea that you have to have at least 3 meaningful interactions over the course of 6 weeks, with 2 of those happening in real life, in order to really kind of get the friendship going in the right direction. And so maybe like you are, I don't know, let's say like you and the guy whose wife works out with Val, right? Like you guys are at the gym together. Maybe you can.
Maybe I should introduce myself first.
You should introduce yourself and start.
I should do this and just be like, "Hey, how are you doing, buddy?"
Exactly. So first interaction would be like, "Hey, I'm Scott. I know, I see that you work out with my wife pretty much daily. Why don't we work out together?" That could be your first interaction. And then maybe week 3, and maybe you exchange your numbers that first week. We can work out together, and at some point you exchange numbers. And maybe
hopefully at that point we are working out maybe a little more consistently too.
Possibly. I just don't know with you.
We both, man, both of us trying to keep this dad bod going pretty good.
Hey, there you go. Your father figures. So
yes, not a dad bod, it's a father figure.
So then maybe on week 3, it's like, hey, I'm going to shoot him a text because some, football player got traded, or, Jalen Hurts just signed the largest, contract in NFL history, whatever the situation is. You send a text, you have an interaction, right? You guys have this interaction back and forth. That's considered your second interaction. And then maybe in week 6, you could be like, hey man, why don't we go grab some tacos over at Fuzzy's or Torchy's or wherever you guys like to go. And then when you can get those 3 interactions within a 6-week period, then it's more likely that the both of you will have the interest and maintain interest to foster the relationship to become a true friendship, because you've put in that effort.
So it's kind of like, my hobby, how you and I both see therapists, right? And correct. I'm all about that. I believe in it, to have somebody to talk to. And I was talking to him and I said, dude, I just have no hobbies. He's like, okay, now the next time we meet, I want you to have a hobby. And it's about 2 months that I meet with him every 2 months. And I realized on my way in that I had not picked a hobby. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to maintain my yard as my hobby.
A hobby.
Yes, of course. I mean, I got to keep it green.
It's a necessity. It's a necessity.
I have hired people to maintain it for a long time. Now I'm not going to mow it.
All right. Fair point.
Because in Prosper, it gets like hundreds of degrees in the summertime and it's nasty and I don't want to do that. So they will mow it and they will edge it because, I just also don't have a mower. So I don't want to go buy one and store one. So I will work on keeping it green and weed free and watered and all that. So that's my boring, suburbia.
Boring. That's all I could think. Like,
hobby.
Jesus, could you have a more boring hobby?
Some people do woodwork. Some people do other things like, hey, I'm going to learn to golf. I'm like, hey, I'm going to keep my lawn green. So so what I've got to do, and I can equate that to the 3-6 rule, is making sure, hey, I've got a new plant that we're putting into the flower bed. And now I have to make sure I put fertilizer on it. I have to make sure I water it. I have to make sure I do these things consistently. Because what you're telling me is not necessarily that's not how you find friends, the 3-6 rule. That's how you found somebody. Now we have to kind of let the roots simmer a little bit.
Right.
And I was thinking about something, earlier today as we were talking about, hey, this is what we're going to talk about on our podcast. And I thought about, as a kid, I think one of the things that I do to sabotage friendships is I put an expectation that every day we have to do something. Because if you remember, like as a teenager or as a kid, we talked about the routines and going to school. I saw my friends every day, right? I would go to school with them every day. And then the weekend, like we would go hang out at their house and we would go to Peter Piper Pizza and we would go all these different places. And so it was like, and then on Sunday, I saw them at church. So every single day of the week, I saw these friends. And so I don't know that I've ever transitioned to a friendship doesn't have to be every day.
Right.
And, you know, I don't have to text them every day. They don't have to text me every day. We can, you know, we can go 2 weeks, you know, and the 3-6 rule makes perfect sense. It's 3 interactions in 6 weeks. That's once every 2 weeks. Like, that's way different than, you know, than what we had as a kid, which was, you know, and now, you know, I still, you know, Val's my wife, but she's also probably my best friend and I see her every day. And so I try to put that same, you know, that same effort, or I don't, I think I have to put that same effort. And so therefore, since I don't, I'm like, well, I guess I don't have any friends, right? That are true friends.
And I think there's a big difference too. Like it's, you know, the difference between you and I, me sitting here saying I talk to my friends every day and you're saying I don't have to talk to them every day. And I think that's the difference between, you know, friendships between females and friendships between males, like male and male, female. And of course, I've also done research on male friendships because
specifically for me.
Correct. Specifically for you, because you and I have talked for years and years and years and how you're like, I just don't, you know, aside from, you know, Sean or James, even, it's like, you don't have more friends in that. And only one of those dudes lives here. And so it's like, well, James can't do anything. Right. Like, so, you know, I came across an article one day that had to do with male friendships specifically. And I saved it just for this specific podcast. Back in the 90s, there was a study done where they asked males. By the way,
real quick, the 90s was like 30 years ago. But anyways, continue.
I know. Isn't that crazy? So they did a study, I want to say it was like 98, where they asked a certain amount of males, you know, if they had close friends. And 3% in 98 said they had no close friends. So then they re-asked that question again within the last 3 to 4 years. And that number had increased to 15%. So 15% of men now say they have no close friends at all compared to 3%. And so they attribute it to that, to, you know, several things such as like social media, just differences in the world.
Probably texting.
Correct. Like you don't have to necessarily be somewhere to have, you know, when we were growing up, like we didn't have texting. You had to go out and find your friends and go to somebody's house and go, you know, make that effort. Well, people just don't make effort anymore because social media has made everything so much easier. Not just social media, but like I said, texting, email, you know, it's all so much easier than having these interactions. Well, the difference too is that men, if you think about it, men have side-by-side relationships where women have face-to-face relationships. And so what men are lacking is this connection that women have. You know, you would never, I won't say never, but it's a rare instance that you go to a restaurant at dinner time and you see 2 guys sitting across from each other at like a table. Like most of the time it's like guys will do lunch or they'll do drinks, or if they do dinner, they're going to go sit at the bar next to each other. So this is what it means by side by side. But because they're side by side, they're not able to make that eye contact. They're not able to make that connection.
And maybe it's just me, but even if I am across from somebody, even if I do have a face-to-face with a friend of mine, it's a dude, there's very little eye contact. And that could just be me, but it's just like, we're thinking about this over there. We're looking over there. We're all over the place. And I can look at like, you know, women and they're like eyeball to eyeball, like boom, right here, connecting, looking at each other's souls. So, yeah. Right.
And that's just the way they are. Men also communicate differently. They typically communicate in 30-second bursts. So you really can't get much out in 30 seconds. And men are always again, I use always, but for the most part, research shows men are surface level. They don't get deep. They don't get emotional. There's a joyful cynicism in what they talk about, sarcasm, you know.
We just want to leave happy. And we put our, you know, all the troubles that we have because we got to look macho to our buddies. Like this guy,
vulnerable.
This guy can't be more macho than me. So I'm not going to tell him the struggles I have or the things that I'm dealing with or the problems that I have in my life because, well, honestly, like, first of all, I don't even know how close of friends we really are because, you know,
surface level.
Exactly. We've never gotten
We've
that
gone
deep.
to lunch.
And even then, like, even my best friends that I have, these, you know, mainly 2 that are, I would consider best friends. like, I don't even get too deep with them either, unless it's like, we have to get there, but it definitely never starts with that. It never starts at that level. I never call my friend like, dude, like I'm going through some crap right now.
Right.
I try to just be macho about it.
Right. Women, I'm like, yo, I will call every single one of my girlfriends. I will text them all, get their a point of view on everything, whether it's, how I'm feeling, a work situation, the guy I'm seeing, like, and we will get in deep. And, I think the other difference is that men often also qualify their friends into these different categories, where women, for me, it'll be like, oh, my best friend. Well, I have several best friends and I use them for everything. Right. Well, guys, though, are different. They have categories. So they'll have like, you never hear a guy say like, it's typically like, oh, my buddy from college, my best friend in college. So they have their college buddies,
right.
And then they have their, my buddy I play football with. So these are like their activity-based friends, they go do something with them. They play golf or, whatever. They go to car shows. Those are their activity-based friends. And then they have their, reliable instrumental friends. Like, oh, my buddy, sometimes he watches my house for me when I go, or he runs me to the airport, or, or drinking buddies. Those are like sometimes like their coworkers who, again, very surface level, but it's rare that you have one guy who does all of that in a male friendship. It's very fragmented. Yeah. And again, that prevents that connection. It prevents that valuation and that intimate, deeper friendship that women typically have, or it's easier for women to have, because in society, it's okay for women to be emotional and to seek support and to, have that connection. But how often do you say to your buddy, like, if your buddy is like having a hard time, how often are you like, hey man, tell me more, I'm here for you? Do you ever say that? Have you ever said that?
Yeah, I mean, of course I have. Like, I'm always going to be there for him, but that's, to me, it's a very, again, surface level. If you need anything, man, let me know. But they're dudes.
So what happens if he starts talking to you? What happens if he starts?
I'm going to listen. I mean, that's one thing that I do well, I think, is listen to what they're going through, because, one thing I try not to do is judge them for what they're going through.
No, I don't mean that. I don't mean in this sense. I mean, what's going on in your head when this dude starts talking about his wife? Are you like, oh my gosh?
Oh, no, absolutely not. So I'm going to listen, and I'm going to, go back and forth with him, because I've been there, I've been there in a lot of things. So that is, but I'm not going to necessarily bring it up myself or fish for it. But if he's like, hey, you know what, I needed to talk this out.
Right.
Of course, I'm going to be there to talk it out with him. Okay, but he's got to bring it up. I'm not going to be the one like, let's talk this out, buddy. Let's have a therapy session. But if he says I need to, then okay, let's do it.
Right. Fair point.
So I just feel like what we're talking about here, and just to kind of circle back and kind of wrap things up. And there's so much more show notes that we have and things that we'll share probably kind of throughout the course of this. But the one thing that I realized is it's me, it's my personality. It's me having to do something,
right,
as opposed to like, take this pill and it will correct that,
right,
that defect, and you will have all these friends.
Right. And so really, I just want to kind of touch real fast on, what you can do. So you have what's called the liking gap, where people tend to underestimate how much other people like them. So when you're going into this new friendship, you have all these insecurities that have crept up. You're thinking, hey, they're not going to like me for whatever reason. But if you change that and you go in thinking, hey, they're going to like me because I'm a likable guy and
right,
I'm funny, or all these things, and they're going to be more likely to get along with you, to want to see you again, to hang out again. And you have to go in and you have to ignore. And I feel like this is probably what you do a lot. You probably engage just based on your personality. I bet that you would probably engage in covert avoidance quite often, which is like, you're there, you show up, but you like don't engage.
Yeah, I'm there. I'll listen. I'll have surface level stuff, but I won't necessarily.
But maybe you're on your phone at the same time, or you're doing other things where it's like you're not really present. And so when that
happens a lot, yeah.
Right. And so when you do that, it takes away from the effort that you're putting in to create these friendships. And, you have to go in and assume people are going to like you and put in this effort. And the biggest thing that they say for finding friends is you have to make the other person feel valued. Like, hey, I really enjoyed hanging out with you today, or, hey, that, I liked your, I don't know how dudes talk, so I don't know if it's like, hey, I like your car, or whatever the situation is.
It's always a one up. So like, hey, my team won, your team lost. Like, haha, you guys suck. Right. Like, that's how it starts.
So that's it. It's like you're making them feel valued because even though you're giving them shit, it's like, hey, I'm still texting him. So he knows it's still like, hey,
Right.
So that's it. You have to make them feel valued. And they're, in order to, another way is join a class, like, or something, find a social group, like a Spanish class, go to the gym, whatever you do, join it and go repeatedly because friendship, is, define the definition that I found that I like the most of friendship is repeated unplanned interactions. Like you're going to this class while you're here in this Spanish class, you're going to talk to somebody else who's there maybe during a break or you're going to go to lunch together, whatever it is. Repeated unplanned interaction. And there's this thing called the mere exposure effect. And the other reason, and this is the reason, one of the reasons that it's so easy for kids to make friends, because the more we're exposed to someone, the more we assume we like them. So by mere exposure alone, by going to this class over and over, you see these same people, you start to assume that you are going to like these people because you see them over and over again.
And sometimes you kind of have to, because you have to get along with them. If you're at work, you have to work together. Obviously at school, when you walk into school, you don't know who's going to be your friend, but then you see them every day and you're like, yeah, they've been my friend for forever. So just, being around them constantly, you sometimes you have to go through things together. You have to figure things out. And then you end up, hey, actually kind of do like this person.
And so really you have to change your expectations and your definition of friendships. Those people that you consider acquaintances, instead of saying they're acquaintances, they're just your friends. You don't have to say, don't devalue it by saying it's an acquaintance.
Yeah, I have a problem with that. Sometimes I do that a lot. Like just to even avoid having to be their friend. You know what I mean? Like, they're just an acquaintance. So
exactly. I mean, and then finally, have an open mind. You have to be uncomfortable for just a little bit. But once you can get over that,
just got to learn to be comfortable being uncomfortable.
Exactly. And, and for you, really, I mean, the two biggest things I'd say for you to find friends, and it was hard and I've done it, but you got to get out of the house
for more than just
work, work and your kids' games.
Listen,
you have to put in effort. You have to put in effort. So those are my rules for making friends.
All right. Well, Dr. Holly, it's great to be in this therapy session with you today. No, seriously, like the thing that I pull from this, like we talked about, like I just have to do it. Like I have to change my personality, not necessarily change my personality, but get outside myself, like you talked about, and just really don't be worried about what other people are going to think, or don't even be scared of the friendship, and realizing it doesn't have to be every day. That may be one of the things that I pull back from is every day I've got to make this thing happen. Like, oh shoot,
and you have to realize too, that not all friendships that you try to make work are going to work. And that's okay. Yeah. It's not a failure on your part. Sometimes they just don't work out.
Yeah. Your life did not change. All right. So I know there's plenty more. There's a lot of research that was put into this over the last probably 15 years of your life to figure out how we make friends. But let's go ahead and wrap it up. And, last time I had some rapid fire questions for you. So what do you got? You got any for me today?
I sure do. Number one, favorite song of all time.
So that just moves from like week to week and from month to month, but I can listen. With one of my friends, we had a discussion and he was talking about it. And I said, yeah, I agree. I could listen to Blink 182 and never turn them off ever. And so anything by them, the first song I really turned me on to them was What's My Age Again. So I could listen to that one over and over again, but I can listen to all their stuff. I just love listening to their stuff.
All right. Favorite food?
It will have to be candy. And my favorite candy is Skittles. I love anything that's fruity with like a thin candy shell with fruit in the middle, a fruit chew, anything like that. That's my favorite stuff.
What's your favorite color Skittle though?
Oh man, they just all of them together.
Let's choose one.
Oh, it's good. I mean, I would eat red. Red's the best one.
All right. What is your favorite restaurant?
Like fast food or
any restaurant?
Oh man. I would have to say my favorite restaurant. Just don't.
And you are terrible at rapid fire. These are supposed to be fast answers.
I know. Let's go with Mariana's San Diego Taco Shop here in Frisco. Shout out.
All right. Last question. Favorite video game of all time?
Oh, 007 James Bond. That's a rapid fire. Easy. 007. And they just put it on Xbox. And I mean, the controls are better. I love it. The controls are way better. But there's just something about it, man. I probably put in 10,000 hours on that game. Love it.
Oh, I have no doubt. That's it, man. That's what I got for you today.
All right. Well, thanks for being in, and we look forward to having you guys on the next show. See you later.
Everyone, see ya.
Hey, what's up, my channel? Please hit the drop a like and hit the subscribe button. Looking for my first subscriber. Can't subscribe myself. Can't do that for some reason. I don't know why. Wish you could.